Story 1. My name is Tom, and I work as a delivery driver for a cozy little diner called Maggie's Place. For a few months now, my job had been straightforward and uneventful, until one night in late October that I'll never forget. It was a chilly evening just a few days before Halloween. The sky was pitch black, and the moon was hidden behind thick clouds. I was about to wrap up my shift when the phone rang. It was a standard order, a cheeseburger, fries, and a milkshake. Nothing out of the ordinary, except for the address. It was in an unfamiliar part of town, an old street called Maple Avenue. I consulted my map app and saw that it led to a neighborhood I rarely visited. The drive to Maple Avenue turned out to be longer than expected. The streets grew quieter and darker as I went along. When I finally arrived on Maple Avenue, it was an eerie scene. The street was lined with towering trees and grand, but evidently neglected, houses. There wasn't a car in sight, and the houses appeared dark and deserted. At the end of the street, I found house number 103, a large, dilapidated mansion with peeling paint and shattered windows. The yard was overgrown, and the gate creaked loudly as I pushed it open. I walked up to the front door and knocked. The sound reverberated through the empty house. I waited, but no one answered. I knocked again, more insistently this time, but still nothing. Just as I was about to leave, I heard a voice from above. "I'm coming." The voice was faint and distant, coming from an upper window. I looked up, but the figure I saw was too shadowy to make out clearly. Relieved that someone was home, I waited on the porch with the food. But no one came downstairs. I called out, "Hello, your food is here." There was no response. I double-checked the address on my phone, it was correct. I tried calling the number on the order slip, but it went straight to voicemail. My unease grew as I stood there, feeling increasingly unsettled. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me. I spun around to see an elderly woman standing on the sidewalk. Her gaze was filled with concern. "Are you looking for someone?" she asked. "Yes, I have a delivery for this house," I replied, pointing to 103 Maple Avenue. "But no one is answering the door." The old woman's eyes widened. She shook her head slowly. "No one lives there. That house has been abandoned for years. It's haunted." A chill ran down my spine. "Haunted? Are you sure?" She nodded. "People say they hear voices and see shadows in the windows. The house has been empty since the family that owned it died in a fire." I didn't know how to respond. The woman seemed sincere, and the house did look like it had been neglected for a long time. I turned back to the house, a shiver of fear creeping over me. What was happening? Who had placed the order? Deciding it was best to leave, I set the food down on the porch and started walking back to my car. Just as I was about to open the door, I heard the voice again, louder this time. "I'm coming." I whirled around, but the porch was empty, and the house was silent. My heart raced as I scrambled into my car and drove away as fast as I could. My hands were shaking, and my pulse was pounding. When I got back to the diner, Maggie, the owner, noticed my pale face. "What's wrong?" she asked. I told her everything. She listened carefully, then sighed. "Maple Avenue, I've heard stories about that place. It's been abandoned for over a decade. It must have been a prank call." A prank call? It didn't feel like a prank, it felt too real. I couldn't shake the feeling that something strange had occurred. I finished my shift and went home, but sleep eluded me that night. The voice, the shadow in the window, the old woman's warning, everything replayed in my mind. A few days later, curiosity got the better of me. I researched the house at 103 Maple Avenue and found old newspaper articles about a fire that had destroyed it 15 years ago. A family of 4 had perished in the blaze, and the house had been abandoned ever since. I don't know who or what I encountered that night, but I've never returned to Maple Avenue. Every time I pass that part of town, a chill runs down my spine, and whenever I hear someone say, "I'm coming," I remember that night in the abandoned house with the shadow in the window. Before we dive into the next story, if you're new here, please make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon for upcoming scary tales. Your support means a lot to us, so please share these stories with your friends and family. Story 2. It was a stormy Friday night, the kind where the rain seems to fall in sheets and the darkness feels heavier. I was slogging through my usual shift as a pizza delivery guy, and after 3 hours of constant deliveries, my stomach was in knots. I was desperate for a bathroom break, but with orders piling up and the boss's strict no breaks rule during busy periods, I had no choice but to press on. I grabbed the next pizza and dashed out the door. The address was for a distant, quiet part of town with few streetlights. As I drove, I couldn't shake the thought of finding a bathroom. Maybe the customer would let me use theirs, though I knew it was a long shot. When I finally reached the address, the house appeared dark and foreboding, with only one dim light flickering inside. I parked and stepped out, clutching the pizza box tightly. The rain was coming down hard, soaking me through. As I trudged up the driveway, I noticed something shifting in the bushes near the house. My heart skipped a beat. Was it just an animal, or was someone lurking there? I took a deep breath and tried to steady myself, though unease gnawed at my gut. I rang the doorbell and kept my eyes on the bushes, where shadows seemed to dance. The door creaked open, and a woman in her 30s peered out. She looked startled and uncertain. "Hi, your pizza's here," I said, trying to sound normal despite my jittery nerves. "That'll be $15. She gave a nervous smile and reached into her purse, but her gaze kept darting past me to the bushes. Her expression suddenly turned to fear. "Is everything okay?" I asked, my heart racing. "Did you see someone out there?" Her voice trembled as she whispered, "That's my ex. He's been stalking me for weeks." My stomach dropped. I knew I had to act quickly. "Do you have a phone? We need to call the police." She nodded and hurried inside, leaving the door ajar. I stood exposed on the porch, feeling vulnerable, but I knew I couldn't leave. Moments later, she emerged with her phone, her hand shaking as she handed it to me. I explained the situation to the dispatcher, keeping a vigilant eye on the bushes. The dispatcher assured me that officers were on their way. The woman and I huddled together on the porch, listening to the rain and the occasional rustle from the bushes. After what felt like an eternity, I saw the flashing lights of a police car. 2 officers emerged, their flashlights slicing through the darkness. One approached us while the other headed toward the bushes. "What's going on here?" one officer asked. I quickly relayed the situation, pointing to the bushes where we'd seen movement. The officer nodded and signaled his partner. Together, they advanced on the bushes. Moments later, they dragged out a struggling, yelling man. It was the woman's ex-boyfriend. The woman sobbed with relief and thanked the officers repeatedly. They assured her that he would be taken into custody and she would be safe. As the police car drove off with him, the woman turned to me, tears in her eyes. "Thank you so much. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been here." I gave her a weak smile, still shaken by the adrenaline. "I'm just glad you're okay. But, can I use your bathroom real quick?" She laughed, a sound of both relief and disbelief. "Of course, come in." As I washed my hands, I reflected on how close we had come to something terrible. I was just a pizza delivery guy, but tonight, I had helped someone in real trouble. The darkness seemed even more threatening now, but I also felt a newfound strength. I had faced something truly scary and made it through okay. When I returned to the pizza place, my boss shot me a curious look. "What took you so long?" I shrugged. "Crazy night," I said, not wanting to go into details. As I set out for my next delivery, I felt different, more aware, more cautious. I knew I'd never forget this night. The dark streets and shadowy corners seemed a bit more menacing now, but I felt a bit stronger too. I had faced a real danger and come through it. From that night on, I made sure to stay alert and trust my instincts. You never know what might be lurking in the darkness, and it's always better to be safe than sorry.